I never thought I would be that person from endless internet stories, where a husband writes at 3 in the morning under an anonymous nickname. Guys, I think my wife is cheating on me. I'm 35, an IT specialist, living in an ordinary 2-room flat in a neighborhood where all the houses look alike, where the evenings smell of pizza and hot asphalt, and where someone plays ball on the playground until late autumn. Anya and I had been married for 8 years and seemed to have a stable life. It wasn't picture-perfect happiness or fireworks, but it wasn't hell either. We knew how to be silent with each other without feeling threatened. Or so I thought. The first warning signs did not come like a bolt from the blue, but like a quiet, annoying squeak in the door that you ignore at first. Anya started staying out later. At first, it seemed like spring fatigue. A perfectionist boss, long phone calls. The deadline will die without me. I brought her tea to her laptop. She nodded, pursed her lips, and without taking her eyes off the screen, said, "You're my savior." At moments like that, I believed we were a team, not 2 neighbors with a bathroom schedule. And yet something changed the air between us, as if a window had been opened in the flat in December, and a draft was blowing through the rooms, moving the curtains. I remember the very first intuitive blow. We were lying on the sofa, each leafing through our own pages. Me through the sports news, Anya through Instagram. She shrugged and smiled at the screen, the kind of smile you give to a puppy on the street, or a joke that no one else will understand. I'm not jealous, or at least I've always considered myself to be. But there was something in that smile that wasn't ours. I asked, "What's so funny?" She automatically covered the phone with her palm, then just as automatically removed her hand and said, "Oh, just a meme about meetings." I shrugged, returned to the news about the striker's injury, and my brain, as if in autonomous mode, ticked a box. Remember. Then the smells appeared. I always recognized her perfume. Light, with citrus, and something green and fresh. At some point, another note was added to it, a masculine one. Not tobacco, no, but something woody, tart. Once I even asked, "Did you buy a new shower gel?" She replied absently, "Someone sprayed some nonsense in the office." I nodded, but the note remained in the air, like a shadow in a photograph. The phone took on a life of its own. Before, it lay everywhere, on the table, on the windowsill, on the washing machine, like a minor character. Now it was always with her, in her pocket, in her hand, under her pillow. She turned off pop-up notifications, changed her password, and set a dark theme. My eyes get tired. Perhaps that was true, but along with that, the plasticity of her movements changed. When the phone vibrated, she seemed to curl up into a ball, shoulders up, eyes down, a slight pause, as if deciding whether to answer or put it off. We almost stopped arguing. That sounds like a plus. But in marriage, silence is often just another form of noise. We began to avoid sensitive topics, as if we were visiting each other. I caught myself not asking, "Why aren't you coming to dinner?" and instead writing, "If it gets cold, reheat it. I ate already." She replied with an emoji, sometimes a heart, sometimes no reply at all. Our flat became a transfer point, like an airport, where everyone is rushing to their flights, and no one has time to look out the window. One night, I woke up to the light on in the kitchen. Anya was sitting at the table, wearing that same faded t-shirt with the faded logo and old shorts. She was whispering, "No, not now. No. He has a call with America tomorrow." I knew she was talking about me. I did have an early call. I stood in the doorway, barefoot, feeling the cold linoleum. I wanted to go in and say, "What's wrong?" But Anya looked up and saw me, and her expression wasn't, "Oh, you're awake," but instant panic, like a child who had been caught drawing on the wallpaper. She pressed the screen, turned off the light, and said, It's too early for you to get up. Go back to sleep." I nodded and left, and didn't sleep until morning. I began to notice the funny things about the statistics. On which days she had late meetings, how often sudden rushes occurred, how these days coincided with her lighter skin, as if she had washed away the day differently than usual. One evening she came home late, around 11. I was sitting at the computer pretending to read forums, but in reality I was just trying not to hear the lift. When she came in, I went up to her, hugged her, breathed in her scent, and clearly felt the unfamiliar click of cologne on my neck. It wasn't ours, not from home, and not from the office. Too personal. I didn't let her go right away. I asked quietly, "Where were you?" Anya pulled away, took a breath. "The girls and I were discussing a project." I nodded. The way you nod when you don't believe something but aren't ready to say it out loud. The worst thing is not the suspicion. The worst thing is how it lives inside you. It changes your roots. I started coming home an hour earlier, checking to see if she had gotten up during the night. When she said, "I'm going to take a shower," I listened to see if the tap turned on right away. I caught myself looking at our photos on the wall and thinking not about where we had been, but about the number of months when everything was normal. I even went to a psychologist just like that. "Hello, my name is Ilya, and I think I'm going crazy." She asked what I wanted, proof or peace of mind. "Proof," I replied too quickly. "Why?" "So I can stop feeling like an idiot." She nodded and suggested I not look for it until I was ready for the consequences. I wasn't ready, but I went ahead anyway. Once we were going to her parents' dacha. Anya was bustling around the house, packing things, and her phone was lying on the bedside table, seemingly oblivious to its new life. It flashed, displaying a notification. Usually, the locked screen showed nothing, but this time, there was a banal banner from the messenger with a confirmation code and a pale line at the top. The name of the contact. The name was not one of ours. Mark. I had never heard of Anya communicating with anyone named Mark. In Russia, Marks are rare. And to be honest, Mark is a name that only appeared in my head in TV series, where successful men drink espresso and wear open coats. I stood there as if in front of a red button. In theory, other people's phones are taboo, but sometimes there are things that outweigh taboos. I didn't open it. I just took a photo of the screen and put the phone back in its place. For the rest of the day, I lived in noise cancellation mode. At the dacha, we grilled fish. Ani's father talked about how he caught it at 6 in the morning, and the neighbors argued about the weather. And I listened to my breathing, as if it were the only stable sound in my head. At night, when everyone was asleep, I picked up my phone again, my own, and looked to see if I could find out anything through messenger backups, through synchronization, through passwords that people change, but habitually set to similar ones. At some point, I caught myself becoming someone I had always despised, a person who reads other people's messages and justifies it with a higher purpose. I turned off my laptop and fell asleep as if I had collapsed. In the morning, I decided, enough. I am not an investigator. I am a husband. I will talk. I planned the conversation as long as someone plans a marriage proposal. I wanted the right moment, so that I wouldn't lose my temper and there wouldn't be any unnecessary ears. But the right moments rarely come on schedule. It came on Saturday evening when we returned from the shopping center. Anya went to take a shower, and I stayed behind to put away the bags. I felt that it was now or never. While the water was running, I sat on the edge of the bed and rehearsed. It's hard for me. I see changes. Let's talk. Simple words, a child's vocabulary. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, her hair wet, I said, Anya, we need to talk. She smiled, a smile that wasn't really a smile. Is it something serious? Yes. She sat down opposite me, put her hands on her knees, as if she were taking an exam. I started with the facts. I feel like you've grown distant. You're often late. You've started hiding your phone. You have some guy named Mark. My voice sounded strange, businesslike, as if I were giving a presentation. Anya flinched at the word Mark, but quickly pulled herself together. It's for work, she said. Really? Yes. Then show me your messages. I didn't shout, and that was scarier than shouting. She was silent for a couple of seconds, then said, I don't have to show you my messages. They're private. Private? I asked. In a marriage? At that moment, I felt a rush of heat. Is there no trust between us anymore? Anya asked quietly. You've created conditions in which trust cannot survive, I replied, and we both fell silent. Then she said something that, as I now understand, was her number one line of defense. I'm tired. You're always busy. You have your projects, your phone calls. You come home and sit down with your laptop. I'm human too. I want attention. It was true, but at the same time, it was not an excuse. I'm no saint, yes. I used to get stuck in my work. But that doesn't explain the secret correspondence and the smell of someone else. I said, if you're missing something, say so. Don't walk away. We have each other. Anya looked away, then looked up and suddenly blurted out, Nothing. Nothing. Her eyes were shining, but not from tears. Who is Mark? I asked again. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, a person. Someone I can talk to. About what? About myself. Can't I talk to you? With you, I can talk about schedules and plans. I don't know what I was expecting. A confession? A dramatic speech? But the reality turned out to be much more prosaic. She didn't say, I've cheated on you. She just stopped denying that there was someone. And that was enough. I stood up, paced around the room like on a stormy deck, and suddenly realized that I needed a break. I'm going for a walk, I said. At night? Yes. I went out into the summer darkness and walked around the neighborhood, first quickly, then more slowly. Images flashed through my mind. How we met, how we moved, how we chose a table, argued about the color of the walls. It seemed to me as if someone else was living my life, and I was watching it through glass. Returning home, I already knew what would happen next. Not what I want, but what is inevitable. From the doors, I could tell that Anya was awake. The light was on in the bedroom, and the kitchen was quiet. I sat down on the edge of the bed, took a breath, and said, I'm not going to live in a love triangle. If you're in a relationship, say so. If not, prove it. If you can't do either, let's get a divorce. She closed her eyes as if she had a headache. Ilya. No, Ilya, honestly. We're adults. She opened her eyes and said, I'm not ready. For what? To talk, I nodded. Then I'll choose. And I went to the kitchen. I slept on the sofa. The morning was sticky. We were silent about everything, like two people who had broken an expensive vase and didn't know who to call. I wrote to a lawyer I knew. He asked, Are you sure? I replied, Yes. He sent me a list of documents and told me what to do. I started packing our things, literally wrapping our souvenirs and books in paper, dividing the plates into mine and yours, as if all of this really belonged to me and her. At some point, Anya came into the room, sat down on a chair, and said, If you leave now, there will be no turning back. I said, Is there a way back? She didn't answer. The week was like a long corridor. We lived next to each other, not together. She often left. I often visited my parents and sat in their kitchen, listening to my mother's, Can I give you a hug? The conversation with the solicitor was like a visit to the dentist, unpleasant, but necessary. He explained that without children and a joint mortgage, it wasn't a big deal, that everything would go according to the standard procedure. I listened and felt like a salesman. This is for me, this is for her. Sign here. But we weren't talking about furniture and bills. One evening, Anya came home earlier than usual. We sat at the table again, like two storytellers who had run out of stories. "I met him," she said suddenly. My heart skipped a beat, but I remained silent. And I realized that I don't want to lie. Not to you, not to myself. I looked at her. For the first time, she didn't hide her eyes. "I really felt lonely with you," she continued. "And I thought it would get better if someone told me that I was important, that I was interesting, that I was alive," I suggested. She nodded. "Ilya, I kissed him. It started with talking, and I don't know what would have happened next. But I know I crossed the line." I sat with my back straight, as if in court. Then I said, "Thank you for telling me the truth." She cried. So did I. We sat in the kitchen and cried quietly, like people who had lost something big, but didn't yet understand how big. The decision was final. I filed for divorce. No drama, no accusations. I just printed out the papers. We went to the registry office. It was hot. It smelled of paper and other people's perfume. Two girls were laughing in the corridor. One of them was holding a bouquet. We sat in line, like we used to sit for a ticket at the clinic. When they called us, I noticed that Anya's hands were shaking. Mine were too. We signed. The woman at the desk said the standard line, "You have the right to reconcile within a month." I nodded. Anya nodded too. We went outside and stopped at the steps. "Maybe we should sit down somewhere," she asked. "Let's do it later," I replied. And I walked away. I walked until I reached the river. The strangest thing was that the world hadn't collapsed. Cars were driving, children were eating ice cream, dogs were pulling on their leashes. My life wasn't over. But the geometry had changed. The evenings became longer. The silence became louder. I moved into a rented flat where there were no pictures of us on the walls. I bought 2 plates, 3 towels, and a blanket. At first, it felt like a hotel. I didn't know where to put my keys or where my place was. I couldn't sleep at night. Every morning, I forced myself to make the bed to remind myself, this is a home, not a temporary shelter. It was difficult with my friends. Some said, "Forget it, all women are like that." And I wanted to hit them. Others said, "You're probably to blame too." And I wanted to disappear. It was best with those who just listened. Kostya and I sat in a bar, and he sat in silence with me for an hour. Then he said, "Want some advice? Don't listen to anyone who demands that you be right, and do one small thing every day that makes your life normal." I asked, "Like what?" He said, "Buy normal salt, not a bag from the delivery service. It's a small thing, but it's yours." It sounded silly, but I went to the shop and chose a jar of cheap sea salt. I put it on the shelf. And for the first time, I felt a slight shift. I have things that I have chosen. Anya and I communicated evenly. We weren't friends. We didn't argue. We dealt with everyday issues. Take the box out of the cupboard. I left your documents. Who do you think needs the coffee grinder more? A month later, we were officially divorced. I thought that something would click that day. It would become easier or harder. Nothing clicked. They just stamped the papers and handed them over. And it's strange. So many tears. So many nights. And one piece of paper. I learned almost nothing about Mark. I didn't ask. Not because I didn't care. Because I understood that other people's details don't heal. They just add images that then pop up in your head uninvited. I asked only once, "Are you happier?" Anya thought for a moment and said, "I'm more honest." "Happier?" I repeated. "I don't know. We said goodbye like people at a train station who are taking different trains, but are on the same platform. I didn't wish her any harm, or myself either. I was just very tired. The first few months after a divorce are a test of self-confidence. You relearn the basics: eating, sleeping, working, talking to people, not doubting every word. I went back to running, short laps around the house, then longer ones. I bought the trainers I had wanted for a long time, but considered a waste of money. I stopped checking my phone every evening because there was nothing to check, and because I realized how destructive it was. I started reading again before bed, instead of endless feeds. I was silent a lot, and I wrote a lot, for myself. The psychologist said, "This is not a diary of pain, it is a diary of the journey." Once, 6 months later, I met Anya at the supermarket. She was standing by the pasta shelf. We noticed each other and smiled politely and gently. We exchanged a few words. "How are you?" "Fine. Work?" "Same," she asked. "Are you running?" I nodded. "Yes." She said, "It suits you." We said goodbye. I went out and got into my car, and I was overcome by a heavy wave. Not of melancholy, but of strange gratitude. We had survived it as best we could. Not perfectly, but honestly in the end. Those who know me often asked me, "What did you feel?" I can list them: anger, humiliation, fear, guilt, shame, loving hatred, emptiness. But strongest of all was the feeling that I had been thrown out of my own life and left without instructions. And also that I didn't want one betrayal to become my biography. I don't want to be the one who was betrayed. I am the one who walked along the embankment in July, and for the first time in a long time, didn't think about anything. The one who bought himself a clay mug at the fair, and every time he drinks from it, he feels the warmth transfer to his palm. The one who realized that being alone does not mean being unwanted. One winter, I went to the sea, simply because I could. I rented a cheap room with a view of the gray, angry, beautiful sea. I walked, ate soup in a cafe where the owner knew people by name, and me as the guy who always asks for bread. In the evening, I sat on the rocks. The wind pulled my hood down, and I thought about how strange we are. We hold on to people like a railing and don't notice that we have legs. We can walk. You can fall and get up. You can survive not being loved the way you expected. I'm not romanticizing my story. There are no heroes in it. Maybe I didn't hear something, didn't ask enough questions, got caught up in work, got used to the comfort I mistook for love. Anya may have tried to hint at it at first, then got tired. Mark is not a villain, just a man who happened to be there when she needed him. This does not absolve any of us of responsibility. But it doesn't make anyone a monster either. We all sometimes turn out to be worse than ourselves. What matters is what we do next. If you are reading this and looking for advice, here is all I can say, without claiming to be universal. First, trust your intuition, but check your moral boundaries. You have the right to say, "It hurts me. I'm scared. I think," without reaching into other people's pockets. The most honest way to find out the truth is to ask for it. If you don't get it, that's already an answer. Second, don't make divorce a goal. It's a tool, sometimes the only one to stop hurting each other. There are no winners in divorce. There are people who will move on with their lives, and that's already a lot. Thirdly, don't let someone else's betrayal define your worth. It's not about you. It's about another person's choice to cope with their emptiness through someone else's intimacy. Your worth lies in who you were before, who you are now, and who you will become. Fourth, take care of your body. Eat, sleep, see a doctor, run, walk. Your body is your anchor when your mind is in turmoil. Fifth, Look for simple supports. A routine that doesn't pretend to be meaningful, but simply keeps you afloat. A clean mug in the morning, music in your headphones on the way home, a call to a friend without a script. Sometimes, I feel like I've aged 10 years at once. Sometimes, on the contrary, I feel younger because I'm relearning simple things. I don't know if I'll meet someone. I'm in no rush. I'm learning to be honest with myself. And if I ever find myself in the kitchen at night again and hear my phone vibrating, I want my first impulse to be not to check, but to ask. And I want to be able to handle the answer, whatever it may be. More than a year has passed. Things that smell like me have appeared in my flat. Clumsy basil grows on the windowsill, always trying to wilt, but coming back to life when I add water. 3 photographs hang on the wall, not ours with someone else, but mine. The sea, a bridge in the fog, and a street after the rain. In the evenings, my upstairs neighbor plays the piano, unevenly but recognizably, and I sometimes guess the melodies. I like this sound. It's alive. It's as if someone in the neighboring flat is also learning to breathe again. I recently received a postcard, an ordinary paper one. No signature. On the front is a drawing of a road sign, home, and an arrow pointing in different directions. On the back is a single sentence. Thank you for choosing the truth. I don't know who sent it. Maybe it was from Anya, or maybe from one of my friends who read my story in a private chat. I put the postcard on the shelf. Sometimes looking at it is like looking at that jar of salt, a small confirmation that I'm living my life as best I can and making choices that I'm prepared to take responsibility for. To be honest, I'm not sure I've gotten over the betrayal. It's not like the flu. It's like a scar. It doesn't hurt every day, but it changes the map of your body. And yet I am grateful that the scar is from something that is healed. And it doesn't heal with time. It heals with action, with truth, with that very conversation that is so scary to start. From the unwillingness to hold on to something dead just because it's ours. From the willingness to admit where you were wrong and ask for forgiveness. Not to get it back, but to move on more easily. That first night, when I saw the light in the kitchen and heard the whispering, I thought it was the end. Now I understand. It was the beginning of my adult life. Not heroic, not cinematic, simple, honest, sometimes boring, sometimes bright. A life in which I can choose what will stand on my shelf, who I will sit down with to drink tea, and to whom I will say, let's talk. For real. And if you're sitting in front of the screen right now and feeling that lump growing in your chest, know this. You are not alone. And you have the right to ask for the truth. And you have the strength to live through it, whatever it may be.